The Cleveland Browns are officially back in Berea for their 2023 training camp. We got all the thoughts from today's first practice in front of fans, some thoughts on a comment from defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, and hey, look at the national media trying to find a way now to pump up the Browns. All this and more, your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, now my 7th season now covering the Cleveland Browns here on Locked On Browns. As always, we've had some good times, had some bad times, hoping for the best of times. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Locked On Browns, always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. The Browns took to the today in Berea, fans in attendance, pretty excited. And the Browns always do such a great job of this. I always absolutely adore the fact, the dog adoption. That is something I just love that they do it. And so much social media interaction you see from it. Just a cool thing that I love that the Browns do here. It was weird today, trying to, when we do this, we sit down, what's your top segment today, and it took me a little while, and then it finally hit me. Jim Schwartz, the defense isn't there yet, and we've talked about this. We've talked about this a lot. It takes time for defenses to gel, and that's not counting in the fact that you have a brand new boss on defense in Jim Schwartz. That's not counting in the fact all the newness at the defensive end position, the newness at the defensive tackle position, the newness at the safety position. It just takes time before you can truly get into it as a defense. You need to start understanding each other's tendencies that you're playing with, their strengths, their weaknesses. And so it's slow as far as integrating, what your defensive game plan is. But it is slowly and steadily starting to come around. I'm not going to take this chance to pick on Jed Wills because it's really difficult as far as, one-on-ones in pass rush scenarios. But for anybody who believes that this is Myles Garrett's year, this is Myles Garrett's best shot, that maybe this is the year Myles Garrett can get that coveted Defensive Player of the Year award. This year's probably the year. So, if you get a chance here before the odds go up a little faster, go check out FanDuel. Maybe, drop a couple of shekels on that. Myles Garrett is absolutely destroying training camp. He's unblockable. Jed Wills, I just only hope for Cedric Wills that this is going to have him ready to go when he faces lesser human beings when it comes time to go here week 1. Myles just an absolute force to this point and to the surprise probably of none of you. Now you talk about, the fact that, it's not there yet. And we saw, what was it, first 7 practices or so, Cleveland Browns offense was kind of just getting it done at will. The one exception, which maybe, is probably good for the defense is, the red zone battles have probably been maybe a little bit more in favor of the defense than the offense. So, the old line of, bend but don't break type of thing. Today you got to see, Obo, obviously, Dalvin Tomlinson, both of those, with batted balls down against Deshaun Watson. So you see some progression here from the defense starting to get, better. Rookie, Cameron Mitchell, we haven't really heard much of Cam Mitchell. I'm assuming he's somebody we're going to get to see take a lot of reps Thursday night in the Hall of Fame game. He had a long pick six for a touchdown, obviously, so good feel-good moment for the rookie who's got to be here looking at this scenario, knowing there's these three fantastic cornerbacks in front of them. And, how am I going to make my name? How am I going to be able to contribute? Just take it easy, Rook. The time, everything will come into fruition. Everything will come into place. And there's still, the overall progression of the defense. And, Jim Schwartz, you're not going to force feed. And he's made a point of saying this. He truly, truly believes in the talent that he has on this defense. So you're not going to put in more than you have to. You want to, let players play by ability, just what they do best, which is the smartest way to go. You know what I'm saying? You don't ask anybody to do something that they're not capable of. You always want to try and accentuate the positives and eliminate the negatives. It's a simple factor. It's the way people should live their lives every single day. Don't beat yourself up of what you can't do. Just work 10 times harder at the things you can do. And Jim knows what he's got here. You've got this incredible secondary. You've got Grant Delpit. You've got, of course, the signings of Juan Thornhill and Rodney McLeod. You've got a nice safety room. You get to the cornerback position, that top three, Denzel Ward, obviously Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson. And these guys are getting really, really good reps in because the Browns wide receiver core is a lot better this year than it has been in years past. So these guys are getting the opportunity to basically sharpen that iron against quality players. The linebackers, it's a weird unit for training camp this year because you have Sione Takitaki and Anthony Walker right now who can't contribute in anything more than individual drills as the Browns work them back into playing shape, making sure that they're 100% and hopefully ready to go, of course, for week one. The defensive line, it's going to be fun. There's going to be some mayhem. There's going to be weeks where this Cleveland Browns defensive line is racking up 7 sacks, 8 sacks. When you have a Myles Garrett, when you have a Zadarius Smith, when you have a Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, and then he gets all the kids, whether it's Alex Wright, whether it is Isaiah McGuire, whether it is Isaiah Thomas, there is a lot of guys on this team that are ready to contribute. You just got to have this wait and see approach, wait for your moment. And when the opportunity is there, you go seize it and you go get yours. So Jim Schwartz, and again, Jim, what's the goal? Is it 70% installation by week one? Is it 75% installation by week one? You just want to get your team as far down the road and ready as you possibly can come week one. It probably behooves the Browns a bunch that week one you play the Cincinnati Bengals. Week two, you play the Pittsburgh Steelers. These are teams very, very well. The Browns have matched up extremely well the last few years against Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So having these two out of the gate gives you time where you can just make sure that the guys are ready with what they need to know. And then once you get into the season, you can see what works, what doesn't work. And then you can start to add, then you can start to subtract from what your game plan is for your defense here and what you're looking to achieve here in 2023. But the fact that Jim Schwartz tells you the defense isn't there yet, yeah, that's fine. That's the way it should be. But the point is now the defense is just stacked together 2 good days against an offense that has looked really, really good early in training camp. We're going to continue on here and talk a little bit the way practice went today. The Browns are kind of switching more to game-like situations as they amp up here and ramp up here and be ready to go Thursday night down in Canton against the New York Jets. Your latest Locked On Browns. I appreciate you all for sticking along for the ride. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We'll continue it up here in just 1 second. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under or to who you think is going to hit the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. We continue on here. Your latest Locked On Browns. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen, whether it's every single day. I'm sorry, if it is every single day, of course. And And I suggest everybody join the everyday crowd by subscribing to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And of course, Locked On Browns is always available, always free wherever you get your podcasts. We're in this weird world now where major news outlets are not giving you day-to-day coverage of your favorite team. Us over here at Locked On, we're thankful for it because that is the premise of what we do. This is what we love to do, and we do it like nobody else does. So continue to make sure you're following along here with your favorite Cleveland Browns coverage on Locked On Browns. As we said, the Browns are trying to transition practice here, and you want to do this obviously ahead of your first true exhibition game here. You're putting in things, some no huddle, just things to differ it up. And the other thing is it excites the players. Some 2-minute drill type of stuff, of course, as well. There are a couple of scenarios today where, Donovan Peoples-Jones with a big catch. It was almost triple coverage. Cedric Tillman with an acrobatic laying out catch of a long pass that led to a Cade York field goal in the 2-minute drill. Cade York, again, has been money to this point. I don't know how to take it. And I'll be honest with you, there's not many of us here who can evaluate kickers. It comes down to whether or not the kick went through the uprights or not. It is plain and simple. But, Cade York seems to be in a really, really good zone right now. Hopefully that continues. And let's just hope the young man doesn't burn himself out here, come week one. Get Cade the work he needs. And once again, as always, we don't rely on the kicker. We don't always want to put it on the shoulders, on the back of the kicker. Other things you got to see today. And I've talked about this a ton. As the Browns offense is going to transition to a team that's going to throw the ball, with more regularity than we've seen in the years past. This was a team that leaned heavily on Nick Chubb, leaned heavily on Kareem Hunt, and even Dearness Johnson at times. But as this transition comes, because you have a quarterback that you're paying $230+ million to, you obviously are going to entrust the game with Deshaun Watson and in his hands. And it makes sense, but even financially, there's no other way it's going to go. It's going to be number 4. Obviously, it's going to lead this team. But you're starting to see the transition of the running backs within the Cleveland Browns offense. And you got to see a lot of that today in what was shown. And I had other people send me video that did not go out, through social media outlets about getting the running backs more involved in the passing game. And again, I continue to tell you this, Nick Chubb will be the most successful Nick Chubb we've ever seen as far as a receiver for this team. Jerome Ford, all accounts, back at practice today. Him and Jakeem Grant, by the way, 2 players that had missed 2 days. Both guys back today, back at work. So obviously a good sign for both players as, training camp continues here. Jerome Ford, and, we'll see. I mean, I'm not sure if we're getting Jerome Ford on Thursday night. Coach Stefanski told us that Kellen Mond will start and that Dorian Thompson-Robinson will get the second half. Did not elaborate any further because he said he wanted to speak with some players, obviously let them know what the deal is. So we'll see on Jerome Ford. But you see them more and more involved. Dimitri Felton, this is something that he should obviously eat up, as this was, a huge part of what he did is at UCLA as far as being a guy who was a, part-time running back, part-time wide receiver, basically just a hybrid player, which, makes a lot of sense and is not uncommon in the era of football that we are. Hassan Hall is probably going to be an interesting guy to watch for Thursday night. Can he create an opportunity for himself? Because there's not much certainty in the Cleveland Browns running back room. Jerome Ford's going to be here. We're not sure if he's going to be considered the running back number 2, or, are the Browns eventually going to make a move? There are some names still out there, obviously, that, could come in here, but it is pretty wide open. As running back, possibly at running back 3, who would be designated running back 3. So a big opportunity, for these guys here. And with this, going with 2-minute drill, obviously going with no huddle, it's also new for the defense here. Guys can't come out of can't come off the field. Essentially, you got to stay on the field. So you get, guys, getting more reps, getting 6, 7 snaps in a row as you start to amp up towards transitioning to playing in preseason games. So that is something different. You got to see, like I said, the Cam Mitchell pick 6, which was a big opportunity for him, a guy that, was in a really, really tough spot because there's a lot of talented players in front of him. It's not that he doesn't possess talent. It's not that he can't contribute, but, there's a lot of guys in front of him. So you need a big spark play like that for yourself. A, it's really, really good for the confidence. B, it starts to open up the coach's eyes as to what maybe you are capable of. And look, just if you're really, really good, you're going to get reps. You don't get blocked at a position if you're talented. If they think you can contribute, you're going to play. You don't take players that you think are capable of giving you assistance or capable of helping you and just pine them. It doesn't work that way in the NFL. You want to be able to rotate players in and out. You always want to keep, the opposition, whether it's the offense or the defense, on its toes. You always want to keep them not knowing what's coming. Now, when we start to talk about, these game type situations, now this is going to transcend, obviously, what's going to go on. We're still not sure of what the defensive plans are for Thursday night as far as, who's in, who's out. I mean, we're pretty sure who's out, obviously, right, guys? But who's in is still certainly a work in progress. I mean, defensive tackle, you got to think if your name's not Dalvin Tomlinson, you're playing. You can tell me Jordan Elliott's your starting defensive tackle right now. That doesn't mean I'm ready to say, oh, Jordan Elliott doesn't need to play in the preseason. Let's not fool ourselves. We're going to get to see most likely, obviously, the young kids at the defensive end position. It'll be nice to see the improvement progress Isaiah Thomas has made. Alex Wright as well. Isaiah McGuire. Of course, Benny the Jets, of course, going to get him out there too, which is going to be an interesting one to see as well. I'm sorry, Lonnie Phelps as well. Going to be interesting to see what he can bring. There's a battle here at linebacker. Tony Fields, Jacob Phillips, both of these guys in this odd position. Jordan Kunasek, who's who's been playing very well. So going to be interesting to follow all these names as we get into Thursday night, the Hall of Fame game, and see what they were able to take out of this camp with Jim Schwartz, with this guy with this high pedigree of being a really, really solid defense coordinator, and getting to see, if the guys are, getting better, improving, which is going to be a big thing to watch here, because you bring in a guy like Jim Schwartz, and you do expect that some marginal players will improve. You don't spend that kind of money. You don't chase after a guy with his pedigree without thinking that some of your marginal players should get better just by playing for a defensive coordinator. So it should be fun to watch here. The national media is starting to, again, twist. And again, a lot of people want to talk positive about the Cleveland Browns all of a sudden. We'll get into that a little further here. Segment 3, Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate y'all for being along for this ride with me. We continue on here, your latest Locked On Browns, closing it out here, segment 3. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Make sure you join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course. We're always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. And as far as, big media doing away from day-to-day coverage, big disgrace to the everyday fan, in my opinion. Now, where do we go from here? My guess would be, Dan Patrick, and of course, the line the other day that the Browns are a very unlikable team. I think we all know where something like this comes from, obviously, and I'm sure there are a lot of us that, the way we live our lives as adults, weren't fans of the situation that Deshaun Watson went through and ultimately, led to him being moved on from the Houston Texans, coming here to the Cleveland Browns. That doesn't mean we're still not allowed to like our team. That doesn't mean we're still not allowed to enjoy football Sundays. That doesn't mean we're not allowed to have our friends over, cook, eat, drink, be merry, and watch your favorite football team. So you want to say they're unlikable? That's fine. You're free to say whatever you want to say. But when you say they're unlikable because of one man, and you have players on this roster like Nick Chubb, you have players on this roster like Myles Garrett, players on this roster like Joe Bitonio, players on this roster like Wyatt Teller, Denzel Ward, Juan Thornhill. These are all likable personalities. These are all likable men. These are all men who carry themselves on and off the field like true individuals. So you want to throw a line out there like that, go ahead. It's your prerogative. You can do what you want to do. But one person should not speak for a group of 53, in my opinion. My guy, Bucky Brooks. Now, Bucky Brooks speaking. And now, the one thing I will say about Bucky Brooks' comment is, I think the Browns roster is more talented than the Bengals roster, Bucky Brooks. So, but I do appreciate you talking about somebody trying to climb the ladder and knock off a 2-time defending AFC North champion. But so many others. And maybe this is part of, look, there is this, and I hate this for you guys. I hate this for this fan base. There's this Murphy's Law thought when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. You could put Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, whatever, and everybody's just got this, well, they're the Browns. It's not going to work out. Well, what's your reasoning? Because it never has. Well, there is no reasoning. It's conjecture. And my job is to analyze. That's what I am paid to do here. See what I see and give my thoughts on it. And for what I see right now is a football team that everyone who's a fan of this franchise should be in agreement on. You should have legit aspirations. Now, look, I know you all been brokenhearted in the past. I get it. I do. And for 7 seasons here, I've kind of felt it with you. But you look at the way this roster is constructed, and Andrew Berry, major kudos. You are 3 deep minimum at corner and then other players afterwards. You are 3 deep at the safety position, solid ball players. Linebackers, you got them, even though this franchise does not value the position. Defensive ends, between the 3 you got, you had 30-something sacks last season, and that's before we even get to the young kids. Dalvin Tomlinson, a fantastic addition. Let's try to work on getting that other veteran defensive tackle in here because that would be immensely, immensely big for this franchise. Offensive line, one of the best in the NFL. At times has been viewed as the best in the NFL. We'll see if they can return to that form this year because there is a transition for the offensive line. Obviously, going to be more pass protection this year, obviously, than in years past. You're still going to throw those bones to these guys if they get it done and say, all right, well, let's pull Joe Bitonio. Let's pull Wyatt Teller because they're busting their butts in, pass protection and let them go annihilate a nickel cornerback on a Nick Chubb outside zone run, things of that nature. This wide receiver core, and, there's some seem to be down on it. That's fine because I think you're all going to have a lot of egg on your face. Amari Cooper, we all know what he is. Amari Cooper has succeeded well in 3 different stops to this point in the NFL. Donovan Peoples-Jones. And again, it's always so quiet with Donovan. And then you see every practice, you see a bunch of the reps, and there's Donovan just doing his thing. And maybe it's good for Donovan because maybe it's not that he's that blown up, but he's really, really grown from this kid that came here, a 3-year player at Michigan, didn't get the opportunity that he needed, the amount of targets that he needed. And then all of a sudden, here's a 6th-round pick forced into extended action. Year 2, great. Year 3, even better, even in this odd spot with Jacoby Brissett for 11. And then, Deshaun Watson after 2 years for 6 games. Very, very strange scenario for a rookie who's trying to continue to grow his game. Elijah Moore. It's almost getting, and I got a couple of texts today, and, with friends that are there every single day, it's, which Elijah Moore highlight do you want? And I think he's doing so well that they're just talking and covering other people right now because it's Elijah Moore. There was this weird, funky little option play today that Elijah Moore was able to take around the end. Turned out to be a play that led to a 1st down, got out of bounds. I believe that was during the 2-minute drill. There's nothing this guy really can't do as far as the offensive side of the ball. And the Browns have not explored this yet. And we'll see if they do because it certainly won't be during preseason. Elijah Moore is a solid punt returner. So this is just another aspect of this young man's game that you can use and add to it. But I think one of the biggest reasons you're getting national media to start maybe change the way they view this franchise and what the aspirations for this team could be in 2023. We began the show with Jim Schwartz. We're going to close the show with Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is a highly respected name within the NFL. So you talk about his stops, Tennessee, obviously his head coaching time in Detroit, that did not work, but his defense was fantastic. His little stint in Buffalo, where his defense was great. Obviously, the Philadelphia Eagles, which led to a Super Bowl win. Everybody you can speak to respects Jim Schwartz and the work he does as far as the defense. And now that we're starting to get, people to see them, view them, big media attending practices, starting to see the talent they have, the individual talent. And then you see, it's a guy like Jim Schwartz that's kind of blending it all together. Jim Schwartz didn't need to take a gig. Jim Schwartz didn't need to come back. Jim Schwartz, fine for the rest of his life. You had to believe that Jim Schwartz had faith in what this Browns team could achieve. And granted, he knew they were going to have to get him a lot of pieces. And I'm sure he had some, I don't want to say demands, but hey, that needs to be improved. That needs to be improved. I need this improved. If you want me to come in here and do what I've always done, we're going to need A, B, C, D, da, 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 da. But I think when you have a name that is respected, like Jim Schwartz's name is, it was quite, obvious that this is now going to turn some national media to believe, wow, they can probably get this right. And, Deshaun should return to form, yes. But now you're talking about a great, great defensive coordinator who's widely respected within the NFL leading this defense. And I think that's where you're starting to see this change from national media look, content is content, and you got to make sure people read. You got to make sure people watch. It's just not what I do. Good things are good. Bad things are bad. I'm not going to push one narrative either way to get people to come here and listen every day. It's just not the way I am. But other places, you got to make sure your readers are reading. So to maybe poo-poo on things and it draws, look, there's hate reads. They all pay the same. But I think now that people are starting to look at the Browns with a little bit more wide open lens, they're understanding that this franchise should be very, very competitive in 2023 and should win, in my opinion, the AFC North in 2023. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host here at Locked On Browns. Make sure you're following at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. We appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen. Join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. And this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.